Gracious good morning, Emerald Universe. You're probably watching this. You might be watching this on Monday or Tuesday because Monday's Labor Day in this cycle of recap for Decision 3 and Prelude to Decision 4. So, also, one of our teams validated kind of late. I had a lot of back and forth on actually Saturday. We try to finish by Friday, but obviously we can go till noon on Saturday officially with the countdown clock on Harvard. So that's happened this last time because it's been very, very complex. And we will jump into the rankings, but I have two special things to watch today that are prelude to. This isn't our last decision. This is four, and then there's five. But five have, at the very beginning of the onboarding, I mentioned that one and five are very different because one, you don't have any competitor or customer feedback yet. It's all cheat sheets, and there's a lot of ready, fire, aim instead of ready and fire, trial and error in the first decision. Well, in the fifth, there's some couple amazing things that happen. One, for instance, inventory is treated very different. I won't get into it. I don't want to distract you from decision four or have you have spend your precious time too early on it because it's an anomaly of the sim where something happens with inventory. You can watch the preview to figure out how that works. But then the interesting thing is that in addition to the inventory being different. Of course, there's no decision six in this sim for the online sim. Now there are a couple more decisions in the ground school because in five instead of five there are eight, and there are recessions and other things that happen. But we do those with simulation rather than with actuality in this sim. So actuality in the sim, that sounds like kind of a ironic statement, but there's two special things I have for you today to help you with decision four. First of all, without a lot of fanfare, there was a change of places. Yellow team did cross over and take the leadership from red for a couple of reasons, especially image, but blue also did some great course correction. And the two key things in terms of the whole purpose of the sim are seeing how all the parts work together. And we start the sim with kind of a real cash and cash flow concern. And all three teams did fantastic. None of you got in trouble in cash flow. I shouldn't speak too soon. Sometimes by five it happens, but usually not. You've done conservative, watched your cash. Then as you get more sophisticated and see what customers want, do the cheat sheets, see what your competitors are doing, you move more towards revenue and saying, hey, how can we lead in revenue? And it's when you look at revenue, um, red has taken the revenue away from blue, but blue has been leading revenue, and it switched around this time. But what's interesting is that yellow team this time actually went into positive territory on Rosé and on the cost basis, even on retained earnings, they moved up to number one, which is interesting because they were being very careful with overall EBIT. And for the first time, they are in overall first place in EBIT. And you can see in the text, which you'll see, hang and make sure you watch this towards the end for decision four. It's very important. There's some other tips in here towards the end when I show the what actually happened in the sliders. That's very important that someone on the team will really understand this because it's going to be you could switch places again big time in four. And then five, there's a final chance because of what happens with inventory. And I have a video for us to watch on that. So when we share our screen, and that'll happen in just a second. So the other thing is there's a text site that I bring up at this stage before four and five, just to show why a lot of you are still carrying A's in this class, and the peer reviews are very important, which you'll see. The grading you won't see probably till Tuesday, even if you're watching this Sunday night or Monday morning. I don't expect you to watch it on Labor Day, but whenever you're watching this, you'll see that there's also some important things on peer review, which will be graded by, it's supposed to be by the end of the week, but certainly by Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll see what happened with peers. And it's just important that everybody participate. And when you see these texts, you'll say, goodness. And I'm like, yeah, this is an unusual in universe, Emerald, in both cash management and the team unity. It's amazing. The teams are doing so great. You'll see in the texts, coordinating schedules. I had one team say, there's no reason we should be below this team. Look at our financials. And they spent a whole weekend analyzing the two competitive financials and found out exactly how to be much more competitive in two of the lines, and it worked this time. So, and you can see all those details in the texting. We'll share the screen and jump to that in a second. And then there's finally a real life dealership, um, actual car dealers YouTube that I'm recommending you watch because it's amazing. I mean, this is, I think it's Flying Wheels or something, but this particular automotive dealer, private dealer, many brands, is a YouTube celebrity knowing for what's going on in the car industry, when to buy and sell for other dealers especially. But for our purposes of our sim, there was a long announcement post this time about how do you balance lost orders over inventory? What do you do about revenue? Why is EBIT so important, and how do you control it? And that was that whole focus thing where you go from cash to revenue, and then you start to look at your costs and lost orders over inventory by decision three, which happened. And just like the team that said, hey, why aren't we doing better? We should be. Let's look at it. And they made the decision to everyone to look at EBIT after every slider, every decision. Let's focus on EBIT. And so that's the next focus. And that helps carry you forward into ROSE and into potentially retained earnings, which this is a turnaround. It's very hard to get that positive. But there are universes that are all in positive EBIT by this time. I won't lie to you. But the changes have been fantastic in terms of figuring out what to do. But most importantly, this sim is really, as you get to see, all about teamwork. And not just teamwork on the sim, but we allow and have and encourage teamwork on all of the assignments and helping each other, putting materials together, chapters, the papers, everything else. We have a dispensation for the presentations and stuff for business. I encourage APA 7 if you want to do it, double spacing throughout, left on the first line and in the references, and then tabbed over for the other two pieces of two parts, one or two. You know, italics for journals, unless they're books on titles and all those APA 7s. That's fine if you want to do that. You've done it your whole time, but this is really business oriented and teamwork oriented. So you'll see in the texting, some people have texted me and said, hey, can we do it this way? It's like, yeah, it's like make it like it's to your board and make it a business presentation. And that's communication is a big part of this, not only written and presentations, obviously with the last presentation with your slides or video, but also with team communication. And this helps on everything. At the very beginning in onboarding, there's a lot of skepticism about teams because they've done CLCs, folks have done CLCs before, and only one person carried the whole thing. Others didn't show up, what have you. You done fantastic. So all three teams in this, in terms of, you'll see in the texting in a second, because I kind of unveiled that site this time before 4. So you can see how fantastically well you're all doing in terms of teamwork. And this happens to an extent in every universe, but unfortunately, I grade myself low. If you get a low grade, I want everyone to pass, everyone to do fantastic. It's a capstone course, but I can't help it because, there's a lot of oversight and there's a lot of standards we have to follow. And if someone does not participate and they go along for the ride, and you'll see a few texts where they say, they don't, I've taken away all the names, but they'll say, all of you that did contribute, wow, we did a great job on this and that, because sometimes there's one or two people that in the whole class that, for whatever reasons, I mean, one person, everyone was really angry at, and they ended up having to repeat the class. They had an organ transplant. So, there are things that happen there's no blame here. There's no right and wrong. It's just that, you have to show up And if you do show up and you don't contribute anything, your team can still rank you high in the peer reviews. That's what 180 points. I mean, there's a lot of points there. And it can really change your grade. So, and I have nothing to do that. It's graded. I just grade the peer review. So you've had one, and you'll have one more. So keep showing up. Keep up this practice that's wonderful of making your schedules work. I realize, I do a lot of tutoring and I work 12-hour days too, and I know it's tough when you're a working adult on this online classes. A lot of you have kids or are active military or are caring for elderly adults. There's many situations when you have older, not non-working undergrads in the ground classes, but a lot of working adults are finishing their capstone degree with this course. So we have to be, as instructors, a lot more careful to understand what's going on with the schedules. And it's very difficult because we're all trying to get together. But you'll see that in the text. So let's move on quickly to the standings. And I'm not going to do a lot of commentary. You understand LOI and all that right now. We're just going to do the visuals quickly so you can take a look at what's going on, but certainly look at the changes in EBIT as well as the two sites. So let's jump on and look at those right now. Okay, here are our standings. And as we said, yellow jumped up above red here, blue maintained the course, and you can see in the points here, if you look closely where the number one was taken away, what went up and went down. Blue dropped down. Blue has been strong in revenue, has always been number two. They dropped to number three here because red took over the leadership uh, in revenue, and from yellow, who was number one, and they became number two. So that was the one change where red did pick up some traction in revenue, did great pricing and quantity, especially pricing. And then, as I said, the progression, you'll see yellow team had numerous texts, which you'll see some of them saying, why aren't we number one? We've got to watch our EBIT more carefully. And every decision, they made a decision to compare the financials and look at the EBIT. And then that helps you with ROCE and with stock price and everything else. So, but if you look at the relative changes, you'll see where in retained earnings and actually in two places, you'll see that in the numbers actually that yellow actually moved into positive territory on ROCE, which happens by decision three usually. If a team's doing really well with the finances, you'll see they can move into positive territory and get much better on ARE, which they did. And since this is positive, and let's see, well, we don't have EBIT here, but you'll see their overall EBIT also was positive for the first time, that and ROCE, and they do go together. And of course, that is because of loss over inventory, balancing supply and demand. And in the video, the car dealer video, you'll see this. It's like 20 minutes, and I should show it to you. Let me jump in here just to show you where it is. This is what it is. I'll put a link in the description, but you can just see this link up here and use it if you have to type it out or pick it up from the description. I'll also post it on Halo in announcements so you have it. But this is, I think it's called Flying Wheels. Yeah, it's Flying Wheels. And this is an independent car dealer in New England. And this is the keyword you can use to find it if you don't find a link in announcements or down in the description. Flying Wheels, the car market is collapsing. And what's fascinating about it is he goes through in this 19 minutes. This is one of the best 19 minutes you'll ever find in terms of lost orders, inventory, and the market. And when you're on your landing page, you always see that market indicator in the gas prices down on the far right. Most of us just blast by the landing page, say, yeah, okay, number one, two, emissions, blah, blah, blah. Let's get onto the sliders because, time is limited. But the market conditions, we don't go through a recession here. We can set that as coaches, but we never do that in this five decision course. They do it in the ground. They have a recession, but they do have market conditions that go up and down seasonally. And this is 5 years of running a manufacturer and your attendant dealerships with a marketing side. So This is real world, and he talks about the seasonality. In these 19 minutes, he covers everything we've covered about price going up and down, what happens, with different models, how they buy and then how they sell, and how the market, what happens to the value of their inventory. And decisions 4 and 5 have got everything to do with the value of your inventory, everything. That becomes key. Please, this is a cheat. I hope you watched this far because, or someone did on the team, because the value of the inventory is key to decision 5 and now to 4 also. And this video is absolutely a touchstone, cornerstone, guiding star in terms of how those all work, the value of your inventory at the dealer level. So if manufacturers are not, and this is your supply chain and your demand chain, and if you don't see that, what's happening both with what are your parts costing and the cost with inflation, or go back down and see how that's affecting prices and how that affects if there's some inflation, and there are inflations in the sim in both the cost of money and especially in field prices, which makes image and family get a little tougher for decision 4 and 5, and we've already had a tough time. Just as this has been the best universe with communication, which is where your grade is based for communication and texting, but still, the you've had problems with EBIT here because of that swinging between inventory and lost orders. And that's been corrected by Yellow big time this time. And there's information and text on how they did it. Also look at the sliders and see how they did it. And it just for the sake of learning, see what's going on there. It doesn't have as a big impact, certainly in by 5, because you don't have to worry about plant investment for decision 6. There is no decision 6. So the plant isn't as important. It's the value of inventory that's important. We shouldn't do dumping, but something happens with the characteristics that you'll see in 5 that's important. In 4, it is important to watch this video, this 19 minutes, to see how do all these parts tie together, because you'll see in some of the text that Yellow figured it out. Let's just get a flavor for this, a brief flavor.
All these cars doubled up right there. I've had that one for over a year. That is not a good sign. Things aren't looking too pretty for the car industry right now. And in today's video, I'm gonna explain to you, like, if you're a consumer, what you should be looking out for, because things are actually getting better for you. If your car dealer owns some type of dealership, or you're like buying and selling cars on the side, this video also applies to you. I'm gonna go through the entire market because there's a lot of updates and my feet are on the ground. I like to say that I do kind of have a crystal ball because I get.
It's important to see what he's saying in terms of all the ups and downs with pricing, because this affects your actual pricing in the sim. And this is a real world example of how real the sim is in terms of sensitivity to pricing, market changes, the market indicator, and especially gas prices and image. So low cost and eco come into their own, but they're still difficult. But you'll see that a couple teams actually stop the bleeding in those 2 lines.
Get to see how people are spending their money, and I try to do these car market updates monthly. You're on to a new month. We're on to a whole new set of issues. I'm going to talk about Amazon selling new cars and how that's going to affect the world soon, and what's going on with trucks and SUVs and cars and electric vehicles, a whole nother headache. My name is Craig from Flying Wheels. Stay tuned. I'm going to get into it. Let's get going.
So there we go. And that you can see that happens in terms of how it ties to all the decision we're making, because he gets into a lot of detail of pricing, consumers' demand, what they're looking for, what they're not, the cost of inventory that has changed price, how much longer it takes to move it because of those changes. All this is very relevant to the sim because it's what's happening behind the scenes with the algorithms. Now, the other thing is simtext.com. It's just simtext.com. Up here, you can see it, simtexts.com. And that's some examples. We usually hold this off, obviously, because there hasn't been a lot of texting until decision 4 or 5. But this differs universe to universe. And as we look at the changes, this is our universe has happened this time. You will see that it is absolutely why this is an A+ class all the way in terms of the key business communication. The evolution of Team Text tells the whole story from initially lost to sim pros. This universe has a record communication excellence. This is you. The primary purpose of simulations to foster business teamwork. And these examples illustrate how part system overcame obstacles and made the simulation successful despite their hectic schedules. So if you haven't been doing this, I mean, all three teams are here, and you're all doing fantastic, but some more than others in terms of helping with the papers and the other deliverables. In the beginning, I promised you'll see this as a different team experience than ever before, and it has happened thanks to you. You'll see with all your busy schedules, you have a huge amount of back and forth on the texts with your revisions, the paper. How are the decisions? How can we get together to answer questions together on the assignments? What about the discussion posts? Are we talking to each other there? Hey, let's talk about this because of that. Also, the annexes in the logbooks, the SWATs, the SMART goals, discussions about none of this makes it into Halo, which is why I try to repeat some of the text in Halo, but this is a celebration site for all of you in terms of how it goes on and on for pages and pages. But there's a lot of information too about each other here for decision 4 and 5. So I'm unveiling this and showing some of the strategy, how you work together. If you're not working as much together and you're doing a lot of individual things and you can help each other, go for it. But certainly there are a lot of texts here that show the strategy versus competition, that how dedicated you are to your own team doing well and placing. And that's universal in this universe. Everybody is really in it for each other, which is awesome. So let's go back to EBIT. Here we are with EBIT, and this is kind of the summary story of how we did. I'll also post a visual over this or in the link in the description, but kind of you can see our better worst, what happened here from the last two decisions, what happened here in terms of course corrections, who did well. And you can see just looking at now, Blue did much better in low costs. Blue figured out the formula. So even though they're third, they went from way down here to cut it in half. And that's amazing to look at Blue and say, what did they do? The corrections they made to save low cost. Now, Red still is doing well there. And from they did a little better from the straight line they had last time. So hats off to Red and Blue. Yellow, again, also was way down here. So all three teams did better. And remember, Blue was already off the chart here when we started, and they have stopped the bleeding to that extent. So don't think if there's change of places or that, I mean, this is a much flatter line, except, the exception is Red has had some major problems in image in terms of inventory and lost orders, and that's because of pricing, mostly because of pricing, but also some plant decisions. And I got a lot of text you'll see in the text site, simtex.com, a lot of text from Yellow this time. I repeated them in discussions. Everyone doesn't see it. We're all busy. We can't look at everything in Halo. I try to put them in the announcements. It's like Coach D, here we go in announcements. But also, I don't, this servant leadership, I don't put a bunch of my text back in the sim text. I want you to look at each other and what you're seeing in your strategy. You have to learn the strategy, the SWOTs of SMART, how's this happening? And you'll see in some of those texts on sim text that some some of our teams are saying, I did a whole weekend analysis of our P&L compared to XYZ team, and there's no reason we can't jump up in these lines. We are so close. And it happens. It happened because those changes took place. So in family has been really surprising. Again, family was a little problematic, and it's getting to be, we're getting to the point where it's the cash cow and it's not as good in decision 4 and 5. But in most universes, these are extremely positive, and it gets all the EBIT into positive territory for all three. We've had problems with family and with image in this whole universe that is very unusual because we just have kind of missed the beat as a whole universe on how important those two lines are. You'll see that Yellow figured a lot out here. You can see how close they are. They are positive because this makes up for these three, and they're so close to positive that EBIT is positive. It's the first time the first team is solidly positive in all of them because they're so close to positive in all three of the others. And family did them well, but understand they were even higher in family last time. So some of the decisions here, but it still carried them enough with their doing much better in low cost. and stopping the bleeding in image. They figured it out, and you can see with their sliders and what they did at the end of this video, where I just run through the sliders quickly, see some of the things that happened, and in the text you can see some of the things they did in the text to pointedly go after Red's lead and try to beat. And at the same time as this happened there, Red had more problems with image, and I was trying to send pricing signal hints in the texts, but I'm only allowed to do so far. And it's not just I'm only allowed. The our class is watched by other people, a lot of other people. Paul and I have done a lot of videos that you've seen on at Model Sim Professor. There are other ones before Decision 4. You should see. I'll put it in the announcements. There is a long video on Decision 4. It's like an hour long with Paul and I going over what you should do before this very crucial kind of last decision. I mean, you have a 5, but 4 is the last one where you really have final plant stuff to figure out before 5, and cost of inventory. When you watch a YouTube with flying wheels, you'll see, yeah, wow, inventory is so killer or wonderful, depending on how you handle it with the orders and sales. So we're beyond the revenue game. We're now into, and the smartest thing you can do for decision 4 is every decision now look back at EBIT and say what, and you'll see one text by yellow. That's the light bulb that went on this decision while they changed places, as they said, we're not doing a single decision without looking back at EBIT and what it does. And in the beginning, I tell you, I don't emphasize this as much because you don't know what LOI is in decision 1 yet, but I say, don't do anything without looking at cash and without looking at revenue. And then you start to look at costs and say, what's driving the cost here and how is that affecting our EBIT? And you can see analyze these yourself, but you can see the positive territory. We do have EBIT in this one, right? We should have accumulated. Let's see, here's our EBIT here. Yeah, see, we're into positive territory finally on yellow, and the same thing, Rosé has jumped up into positive territory. Not a lot, and there are teams that you'll see all 3 teams can actually be in positive Rosé territory with decision 5 because you're not over-investing in plant for decision 6. You're really just getting rid of the inventory. And if you price too high to make EBIT work, remember this is very elastic. It changes very easily, and you can lose all your market if you even price a couple bucks too high. So you got to continually be very careful of that. So let's jump into some visuals you can look at. Okay, our key indicator we show all the time. The secret to decoding the sim is our LOI, our famous or infamous LOI. And you see how amazingly, the buildup of inventory or et cetera affects that. This is low cost, and we said everybody did better in low cost, so there was a change of positions between yellow and red, which affected the whole sim. And you almost see that this is a direct reflection of change of places, LOI. The algorithmic designers, this is very complex. You cannot decode the sim no matter how good you are at coding. And believe me, people have tried, and I've helped them with the Python side, just for fun. There are teams that have tried it, but it can't be done. I mean, it's very complex, and they have their secret algorithms there in France. I've emailed and texted them many times, especially on LOI, and they're like, "Yeah, you have the key when you figure that out." Well, here it is, and here's the zero line across here, and look at everybody's still doing better, even though yellow got much closer to 0 from way down here, still did a little inventory building in low cost, and blue corrected a lot better. Remember, we mentioned that it was hugely down in low cost. I mean, what else can you say except balancing supply and demand? Everybody did fantastic in this line. Family was usually a lot better, but you can see that what's going on where the zero line is down here, and blue and yellow have improved from before, although blue did drop into some lost orders. But here's your zero line across here, and yellow and blue. Red built a huge amount of inventory in family, which is all about pricing, or a lot about pricing, but also about cost control and marketing, of course. So when you're building inventory, it can be deadly, but it also can happen with family because of gas prices going up, just like it can in image. And that's why, and also growth rates slowing. When growth rates slow and they increase in low cost and eco towards the end of the sim, that you can also get tricked and start to build some inventory. So that's one of the main reasons that because you can see Yellow's inventory build, they they did better with their strategy and the pricing got much closer to zero, which is about here, but they also didn't do quite enough in plant investment because they had some lost orders in terms of supplying. So we had some sales that didn't end up in deliveries because of the ability, the capacity. Not a lot, not terribly. In fact, Blue did even better. Blue's like the closest here in stopping the bleeding that we've had in family. But the difference of the inventory buildup and then Yellow correcting that compared to Red deviating and building a ton in in family is huge, and one of the main reasons that we had Yellow, suddenly taking the lead and having strong positive EBIT in family. So Eco. My commentary is going to stop. I'm going to just show images here because this has been a long video. So here we go. We've got eco-friendly, and where's our zero line? Should be right almost in the center. Okay, here's our zero line, and this is interesting because, again, family, everybody had issues except Yellow had a strong correction from their lost orders. So you can see that from bottoming out and just being destroyed in family. And you can see that in the EBIT. There was like a giant dip to the bottom. Now it's just close to the top, breaking even. If they hit zero, they'd be in positive territory, but just a little sliver. Um, red, on the other hand, did stop a lot of the bleeding. They had a really much lower one, and Blue continued by having that flat line there, especially in Eco. Eco's killed Blue the whole sim, and that's nothing to blame. It's just a car line manager, and Eco has to do something. And if Blue in decision two had said, we're going to not even do Eco, we're going to keep the depreciation going, but not even have a plant and just get out of it in the beginning, they would have done much, much better. And that's a hard decision to make, to defeature, because that affects morale and other things that they've done good in. So you have to be careful of making that decision. And finally, in image, which has been usually is just rocking the whole sim, we have had some issues back and forth, especially with Yellow trying to stop the bleeding of their lost orders. And you can see that the inventory buildup of Red, everybody took it from terrible to a lot better, but the Blue was into positive territory and started to have a little bit of build up. Red didn't do bad. They overshot slightly. They both did really good. And Yellow is trending up, but still has a ton of lost orders. So even though just slightly, they're just almost positive. They did much better just by stopping the burn and getting up towards zero. So they're not strong. It's not strong positive, but it's not negative either. They cut a big part of the EBIT problem out here. So everybody did quite a bit better in balancing this out, but Yellow still had, they're still the leader. They still did great and a lot of good decisions, and they stopped the bleeding, but they didn't really get into huge EBIT that you can have in image especially with pricing it right when you have the opportunity to. Pricing's a big thing there, but also cost control in terms of the plant. You have to be very careful because image is expensive. It's an expensive car to buy for consumers, but it's also an expensive car to produce. And as we get those features, not overdoing consumption, but as we get other model lines and things like that, decisions in image, you can really drive the cost up quickly in terms of the plant investment. So let's just quickly run through our white market lines and we'll wrap it up. Just some quick screenshots for you to analyze the coming week. Red low cost, and then we move to Red family, and then we move to Red eco-friendly, and then we move to red image. And we have blue, it goes red, blue, yellow as displayed. So we have blue low cost, and we have blue family, and we have blue eco. Look at family, look at this dip. And we have blue eco-friendly, and everybody's really getting this white market line right. And we have image with blue, which you can see a lot of spending going on here in this dip in terms of this slider, which we'll show you down here. So it's rare that we should ever put a slider um, like technology that high. A 9 is really, really high. 9 hardly ever works with anything. And last but certainly not least, we have yellow in low cost, and we have yellow in family, and we see a lot of ups and downs with family. This universe, eco-friendly, what a great match. And we have finally image, and we're looking at we can see where our issues have been in terms of investment. Too much, too less. Here, these last few sliders, and image has been a problem. Some corrections being made, but much closer match is needed in terms of figuring out what am I doing with my sliders in these last three areas. And that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and do take the time to watch the whole dealership, because it's got a lot of tips about how these tie together, the prices, and not just for the sim for Decision 4, also for your final papers, and your final presentations. That YouTube video, you're already doing fantastic on the texting, as you can see from the text site, but that YouTube video is absolutely key in writing your papers in terms of how do these forces work together, because the wheels and the gears turning together are the point of the final paper. That's half the point of it. The second half is, which you'll see in your MBA, if you go that, your doctoral program, any programs you go into, the ending of these courses are always about your own personal career, your family, your choices. How does SWOT and SMART tie to your career? And I'm in that in not the doctorals I finished, but the doctor course I'm in education right now. I'm a student also, and in those courses, it's always at the end we're talking about our own careers, our futures, and all that. So you'll see that that's another part of it, and how those pieces of SMART and SWOT fit together for your careers. And of course, you all get letters, recommendation, you get references if you need them for doing this course. And I mean, somebody may even go and, sell some used cars. I don't ever, that has happened in the past where actually it has been some automotive stuff. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And we will see you in announcements in Halo. Don't forget to look at the announcements.